Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today, it's all about money and paying back interest, but not to a bank, but to a dragon. The war has just ended and you've spent almost every coin for the war, but now you need more funds to rebuild your kingdom. Now you have no choice but to beg the dragon for help. You'll have to pay back that dragon interest and you'll need to do so and have the most points to win the game. Dragon's Interest is an economic game for 3 to 5 players, plays in 60 to 90 minutes, for ages 14 and up, and published by Tasty Minstrel Games. Today, we'll be doing a rule school where I'll teach you how to set up and play the game so that you don't have to read the rulebook yourself. Now I've placed timestamps below me in the description of this video just in case you want to jump to a specific section of the rules. Without further ado, let's get started. Dragon's Interest is an economic game where you're trying to build different types of tiles into your kingdom because you're going to be getting points at the end of the game for having the different unique types and for having the majorities of different types. Now you're going to be building these tiles and gaining money from the dragon, which is great for trying to get points in the end. But at the end of the round, the dragon is going to fly over certain building types and possibly even more depending on certain events, and everyone's going to have to pay interest for those types of tiles. And the interest paid is the amount that you actually spent in order to go in turn order to draft these tiles in the first place. And if you can't pay, you're out of the game ends, and whoever has the most points is the winner. But each of these tiles has a special action where you'll be gaining things depending on how many tiles you have, but also placing certain things in a treasure chest and offering it to someone else, where they can either accept your offer and you get to take what they have, or they will counter offer and they'll get to take something that you have. So it's all about finding the right time and the right person to offer something that they can't refuse. Now this rule school is being shot on a prototype version, so these are not the final components, so some of the components might vary a little bit to what you see once you get the final production version, but you should be able to learn the game just the same. To set up, each player is going to pick one of the characters and take the player's screen for that character and all of the matching contract cards for that character. It doesn't matter which one you select because all of the characters are the same. So each player is going to stand that shield in front of them and they're going to be able to keep some things secret behind their shield. Let's talk about the components that they'll get. So off to the side, you're going to create a supply of knights and gold. Gold is going to come in 3 denominations, 1, 5s, and 10s. Knights will come in 2 denominations, values of 1, which are the smaller ones, and values of 5 knights, which are the larger ones. Now, based on the table here in the bottom left, you'll see depending on the amount of players, each player will get a certain amount of gold and knights, and those golden knights will go behind the player's shield. So for example, in a 5-player game, each player would get 6 gold and 3 knights. And so they'd go behind the shield just like that. Keep in mind that gold in the game, you can make change with the supply at any time for any denominations that you'd like that match. Now in front of each player, you will assemble a kingdom mat, and this is going to be 2 halves that will assemble together sort of like a puzzle. Next, in the middle of the board, you are going to place one of these 2 dragon mountain tiles, and you'll do so depending on the amount of players. Now, this is a 5-sided tile, and you'll only use this if you're playing with 3 players. If you're playing with 4 or 5, you'll use the 6-sided tile. Let's say we're playing this 5-player game. The one you're not using can be placed back in the box, and this will go in the middle of the table. Now, once you've selected that dragon mountain tile, you're going to start setting up the building stacks. You're going to find the gray, blue, yellow, and green building stacks. And you're going to stack them corresponding to the colors on that dragon mountain tile. Now for each of those stacks, you're going to find the one that has the red flag on it. That is going to be the starting tile for each of those. You'll separate that single tile up and put it above the stack of the rest of those tiles of that color. So here you see we have the red starting tile for each of them placed in its own little stack with all the other tiles of that color stacked right next to the mountain tile of that color. Each of these stacks now will get shuffled and stay separate. So all of the grays will be here, all the blues, and so on and so forth. So this will be a stacked, shuffled set of tiles. You'll then want to flip that starter tile up. The green, the yellow, and the blue will all have monetary amounts there. These are going to be buildings that you'll be able to build into your kingdom, and the gray one will be an event that will have some special effects that we'll talk about later. Next, you're going to take the stack of orange building tiles. and you're going to shuffle all of them and then flip the top one up face up like this. There's no starter tile for the orange section, and you're going to do this regardless of the amount of players. Meaning, even if you were playing with 3 players, you'd still set up that orange stack next to the orange color, and once you flip it up, it's always going to be a monetary amount. Now, if you were playing with 3 or 4 players, you'd be done setting up the building tiles at this point. However, if you're playing with 5 players, you would then set up the red tiles. And you'd do the same thing as you did for the orange ones. There's no starter tiles, so you'll shuffle them all and flip the first one up. It's always going to be a monetary value. You'll then take the red dragon and you'll place it in between the tile stacks just to the left of the gray stack, which are the castle tiles, just like that. Now again, this is a prototype, this is just a white box, but in the final production version, you'll be placing the treasure chest in the middle of the table where everyone can reach it. You'll also give the yellow starting player marker to the last person that made a bad deal. The object of the game is to have the most points, and you're going to be gaining points at the end of the game for having different types of buildings in your kingdom and for having the most of certain types of buildings in your kingdom. However, you can't win if you're unable to pay back the dragon a certain amount of interest that you borrowed from them in order to get these buildings in the first place. So you're trying to have enough money to pay back the dragon when interest is due and scoring points as I just mentioned. The game is played over multiple rounds and each round goes through 4 different phases, so let's go through each of those one at a time. So in this first phase, which is called borrowing gold, each player is going to select secretly one of their contract cards. On the back of these are all different amounts of money that you'll be able to basically secretly bid for. And they have different ranges of money there. So everyone is going to place face down their selection, and then everyone's going to reveal simultaneously. Now typically you'll be holding the card face down in front of you, but I've got them all right in the camera so you can see. So once they're all there, it would get revealed. Then the player who has the highest valued contract card is going to get to go first and select a tile. And that's a good thing, but the bad thing is they're going to be the one that's going to be paying the highest interest of this value a little bit later when the dragon wants their interest paid. We'll show you that later. So that player can take any of the face-up tiles that have a money value to them. This one is an event. We'll go over that later. You cannot take one of those. So this player takes 11. They're going to put this tile, and they're going to place that tile on their kingdom board in the corresponding color and or building type. We're going to go over the names of these types when we go over the actions a little bit later. Now, the amount of money that was on this, they will get. So they will get 11 coins from the supply. They'll place this face down here, and their contract card that they use to get that will slide in like this. This is the amount of interest they're going to have to pay the dragon a little bit later in the game that we'll go over. So they're going to take the 11 coins that are on the back of this and add it behind their shield, because money is always put behind your shield, and they get that money from the supply. Then you'd continue in descending order. The next highest one would do the same thing, and so on and so forth. If there's ever a tie, the player who's the start player will get it, or the player closest to the start player in a clockwise motion would get to go. And there is a special card that everyone has called the Jester card. If anyone played a 13 or 14, it's worth 17. But if no one did, it's worth nothing, and they won't get to take anything this round, no tiles. But in that case, this would at least get back into your hand that you can try to use again later. Now this will continue until all players continue to do what I have just shown, which is buying the building, getting the gold, and placing their contract card in their kingdom board. And this will continue until either all players have done this phase, or if there are no money tiles left, just event tiles, that player cannot take any of those. In that case, that player would take their contract card and put it back in their hand, and they don't get a tile this phase. Now, normally you would go to phase 2, which is activating buildings, but in the first round of the game, this generous dragon tile will always be out here because it's the start tile for the gray castle buildings. In this case, you're going to collect the same amount of gold that was on your tile a second time. For example, we had collected 11 for this red tile, we'd collect another 11 gold, and we would skip this second phase. However, we're going to go on to the second phase and show you how this will work for all subsequent rounds now. Now in this second phase, we're assuming that this is essentially the second round here because I've got 2 tiles, 2 contract cards. Starting with the start player and then going clockwise, each player is going to be able to activate a tile on any type of tile that they have at least one of. I have one gray castle, And I have one red tile here. So you could activate either of these two, and each of them has an action on the board. And we're going to go over each of these actions. We're actually going to go over all of them, even though I can't take any of these right now because I don't have any tiles of those. So again, you're going to select any one type of action that you have at least one tile of and carry out that action. So let's go over all those different actions. So the castle action says you take as many knights as you have castle tiles on your board. In this case, I have one. So I would take one knight from my supply and I would put it behind my shield. Then I can take any amount of knights and place it in the treasure chest and give this treasure chest to any other player. So let's say we put 2 knights in there, we close the treasure chest, and we'll pass this to any player we choose. So in this case, we gave it to this player, and you must tell them which tile you'd like from them. You could say, hey, I want this gray castle tile, or maybe I want this green city hall tile. So that's what you're trying to get for them. Now they are going to secretly look in this box. They're going to see 2 knights. They have 2 choices. They can either take these 2 knights and place them behind their own, accepting your offer and giving you the tile that you had asked for, which this would then go on your kingdom tile, or they can match your offer by putting in the same amount of currency. In this case, you offered 2 knights, they put in 2 knights. They're going to close it, they're going to give it back to you. And when you receive the treasure chest, you get to put all of those knights that are in there, the ones that you had offered, and the 2 that they had given you, and you're going to place them behind your shield. But the player that did that will now get to choose any one of your tiles to take from you. So let's say, no, you know what? I paid you what you wanted, and I'm going to take the castle gray tile from you, and they're going to put it just like that. So now they have 2. They have a majority. That's good for final scoring. Then we'll go to the next player clockwise. Now I'm going to go through the rest of the action. Remember, you can only take one action during this activating buildings phase, and you can only activate it if you have at least one building of that type. But for now, I'm just going to go through the different actions and show you what they do. They all work in a similar way, where you're going to be putting something in the treasure chest, giving it to another player to try to get one of their tiles. They're either going to accept it and you can get that tile, or they are going to match your offer, give it back to you, and they'll take one tile from you. And that's pretty much always how that works, but they all work a little bit differently. So let's go over those now. The harbor action allows you to take 1 coin for every harbor tile you have. In this case, we have 1, we put it behind our shield. Then we would take the treasure chest and we would add as many gold as we want into it, give it to another player, and it follows the same rules as I showed you before and talked about, whether they match it and take a tile from you or accept it and you get to take the tile that you want from them. The yellow temple tiles allow you to take 1 coin for each temple tile you have, and then you put in as many knights as you want into the treasure chest to give it to another player and follow those rules. The green city hall tiles allow you to take 1 knight for each green city hall tile you currently have, and then you can put as much gold as you want into the treasure chest, give it to another player, and follow those same rules. Now the arena works a little bit differently. Everybody takes 1 coin for each orange arena tile they have and place it behind their shield. In this case, it's 1. Normally with all the other tiles, only the player taking the action gets to take whatever that is for however many tiles there are. With the arena, everyone gets to do that. Then you, the player taking this action, takes 6 coins and puts it outside of your player's shield. Then each player is going to secretly place any number of knights from behind their shield into their hand, and then at the same time, everyone is going to reveal. Now keep in mind the active player does this too, and whoever has revealed the most knights gets to take the 6 coins from outside of your shield. And you'll get their knights that they bid with to place behind your shield. Any players that did not win get to place those knights that they bid with back behind their own shield. If you were the one that had the most knights that you had bid, the knights that you had bid would actually go back to the supply. You'd take your own 6 coins back and put it behind your shield, but you'd also get another 6 coins from the bank, essentially trading in the knights that you bid for 6 more coins. And in the rare circumstance that nobody bid any knights, you take back your 6 gold, but you don't receive anything else. And if you're activating the Red Adventurers Guild, each player gets to take 1 knight for every Red Adventurer Guild tile they have. Again, it's all players get to do this. Then, it's sort of the opposite of the orange arena tile, where the active player will place 3 knights from behind their shield out in front of their shield. If they don't have 3 knights, they can't take this action. Everyone else will put a certain amount of coins in their hand. They'll blind bid. Whoever's bid the most coins will give the coins to the active player and take the knights. All players that did not win take the coins that they bid and place back behind their shield. And if you, the active player, bid the most coins, you will take the knights back. You'll spend the 3 coins and you'll take another 3 knights from the supply and place it behind your shield. And in the rare case that nobody bid coins, you take back your 3 knights and nothing else happens. So keep in mind that phase 2 of activating buildings happens, each player taking 1 action from the start player going clockwise, then moving on to phase 3, which is refreshing available buildings. Any leftover tiles that are still there will get discarded out of the game. Then you'll flip up the top of each tile, and if any of the tiles look like this is called the Devil's Army event tile, and immediately everyone must either have to discard 2 knights from behind their shield, or one of the tiles from their kingdom out of the game. Next, you'll move to phase 4, which is moving the dragon and paying interest. Now keep in mind, in the first round of the game, if you remember, you skip phase 2, which was taking the actions. You just get twice the gold because of this generous dragon tile. Also, in the first round of the game, you skip this phase 4, you don't have to pay interest. However, any round after the first round of the game, you will have to pay interest. Now at this point, the dragon is always going to move 1 clockwise and jump over a set of tiles, in this case the Blue Harbor tiles. Everybody has to pay interest for the contract cards they have on their kingdom for those blue tiles. Like in this case, I'd have to pay 6 because that is what's there. However, if it looked like this, I'd have to pay all of this, so that would be 13 I'd have to pay. Now, if you cannot pay back your interest to the dragon at this point, you're essentially going to lose. You're going to discard all of your tiles back to the box and you'll be scoring 0 points in the game. Now this dragon moved once, which will happen every single phase 4 except for that first round as we already mentioned. However, if there's any calendar event tiles out there, for each one of those the dragon's going to move an additional space. There's one here, so it moved an additional space and everyone has to now pay interest for their yellow tiles. So in this case, this player also would have to pay the 13. They would have had to have paid 13 here and another 13 there. Then normally the game is going to continue and the first player marker will pass to the player to the left and you'll start this all over again going through those 4 phases. However, at the end of the 4th phase, the game can end in one of 3 ways. If any one player could not pay back the interest as shown to the dragon, or any one player has built 10 tiles in their kingdom, or if all the stacks of the tiles are empty, the game will end. At that point, each player is going to count up their points, remembering any player that did not pay the dragon cannot win and gets 0 points. Each player is going to get 1 point for each of the different building types they have in their kingdom. So for this, the most that you can get is all 6. In this case, we had 1 of each, so this would be 6 points. Then you'd get 1 point for every building type that you have the majority in. But if you're tied, neither player gets it. So if I did not have the majority of any of these, I'd get 0 points. But let's say I had it for the castles here, I'd get 1 more point. At this point, if it's tied, the player with the most knights wins. If it's still tied, the player with the most coins wins. And if it's still tied, the player that gets all their buildings back into the box first wins. Well, I hope this helped you dive right into Dragon's Interest and get to the fun quicker than you normally would if you had to read the rulebook yourself. Now, if you have further questions about the rules, I've placed a link below me in the description of this video, just in case you need some more help. And that's the best place to ask them, since I'll be notified, but so will Tasty Minstrel Games.